Good morning, wrestling fans. Today is Sunday, February 12th, 2023. I guess you could say this Sunday is kind of super because of some silly game that's on today. And since that is tonight, I'm going to talk about a couple times that WWE put on a show, a little show, I guess you could say, called Halftime Heat. That was during the halftime show. But before I get to that, I just want to mention something real quick. Got a quick recommendation. What I was just listening to before I left the house just now, and that is this week's episode, the newest episode of the Kurt Angle Show, where him and Paul Brunwell are talking about his time on the indies, a little bit of when he first started, did some OVW stuff like that, and then a couple of the indie dates when he was in TNA, and the time in between he left Impact Wrestling and went back to WWE. Very good. Talked about shows he did in Northeast Wrestling and then over in the UK for Rev Pro and What Culture Pro Wrestling, where he had matches with Cody Rhodes. Definitely a good match if you haven't seen that, and if you can find it anywhere, I definitely recommend checking that one out. Also has Jim Ross and Jim Cornette on commentary. Those two worked well together. And Zack Sabre Jr., Joe Hendry had good matches with. So I definitely recommend that episode of the podcast. It's a good listen. But on this episode of GMWF, gonna talk about, first gonna go back to 1999, and it was something that was new at the time, where I know other things would do have special shows during halftime of the Super Bowl, in case you didn't want to watch the music performances that they normally have on during the official halftime show. But I never really watched anything during halftime. But then in 1999, of course that changed, because it was announced that WWF was doing a show called Halftime Heat. And this first one originally aired January 31st, 1999, after Super Bowl 33 in Arizona, where will also be held this year. And of course this was not live. This was pre-taped. And it is for the WWF Championship. Mankind challenging The Rock in an empty arena match. And so I definitely watched this, and I remember at the time it was something different that you definitely didn't see that often. And they brawled all over the arena, used weapons, of course, and then finally in the back, Mankind put a forklift on top of The Rock and pinned him with the forklift to win the WWF Championship. And I thought it was very good at the time anyway. I really enjoyed it. I'm not sure now, if I watched it in 2023, if I would have the same opinion on it, I haven't watched that match in a while or not. I'm not sure if that match is available on Peacock or the WWE Network, but I'm sure if you can't find it on either of them, that it's probably on YouTube somewhere, I would think, or somewhere online you can probably find it. But I might have to watch that match again one of these days, because it's been quite a while since I have seen it. And I think the year after that, they also did another Halftime Heat, but it was disappointing because it wasn't the same thing. There was no actual match, and they just showed like video packages and stuff like that. And I remember it was kind of like Sunday Night Heat at the time, what they were doing, where they would show these video packages of highlights of the week, and they would have these, add music to it, add different songs, and like that. So that's pretty much all it was. Like I said, disappointing. And then they didn't do anymore for a long time, and then finally they brought it back 2019, but this time it was an NXT show. And I want to say this one actually was live, was on the network before Peacock. So it was on the WWE Network, and it was Aleister Black, Ricochet, and Velveteen Dream defeating the team of Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa in a 6-man tag. It was not a bad match, but it definitely wasn't a major match like they had back in '99. That was actually a WWF championship match and then not only was it a championship match, but the title changed hands. And nothing against those stars, which, yeah, they were some the top NXT stars, main eventers, but it wasn't between no main roster guys at the time. But not a bad match, and they haven't done one since 2019 either. I wouldn't mind seeing either maybe even AEW try something during the halftime show, or any other promotion. But the smaller ones, I'm sure it would probably be harder to get an audience. So if anybody does it, I'm sure it would probably end up being WWE or AEW. But I would definitely, as much as I love watching the Puppy Bowl on Animal Planet, which is also now on TBS and HBO Max now this year, I think that it would be good to watch some pro wrestling instead of that silly little football game. Of course, nobody would run or have any pay-per-views or anything to go up against the Super Bowl, but like I said, maybe they could air a match during the halftime show, so you don't have to listen to Janet Jackson or Britney Spears or whoever does the halftime shows these days. I don't know what singer or what singers are popular with the young kids these days, but whoever is doing it, I'd much rather, I don't watch the game anyway, but I would try to find out when it's halftime and then be able to watch some pro wrestling, and then when that's over, go back to the Puppy Bowl. So that's all for this episode of GMWF. Again, hope to have more episodes of 360 Wrestling Fanatic up soon, so pay attention and stay tuned for that. Also, I'll be back tomorrow morning for Monday's episode of GMWF. Hope everyone, if you watched the game tonight, hope you have fun, and if you have a party. But until next time, keep watching pro wrestling.